Want to welcome Mr. Schrenk, Les Schrenk, first combat veteran on the Preserving Freedom podcast. 101 years old?
Yes.
101 years old, a B-17 gunner during World War II, shot down 15 months as a prisoner of war. But there's so much more.
You might want to mention it was a ball turret gunner. There is a difference.
No, absolutely. We're going to get into that, but quick introduction, Mr. Schrenk. Truly, I cannot thank you enough for being here, spending your time, for being my first one for this new podcast, Preserving Freedom. So again, it is truly an honor and a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so very much for spending your time.
You're very welcome.
Long Prairie, Minnesota. Born and raised there?
Yes.
Okay. How is Long Prairie, Minnesota? That you remember? What do you remember about Long Prairie, Minnesota?
Well, it was kind of a very backward town, real small. If I remember right, about 2,500 people. But of course, I didn't get into Long Prairie too often because I was born on a farm.
Okay.
And spent most of my time on the farm.
Okay.
Even going to grade school.
Very good. Yep, very good. What was life? So we're going back to 1920s here, all right? And I know you have a sharp mind. What was life like growing back up in the 1920s?
Very primitive. We had no running water, no central heat. We had an outhouse. Spent most of the time working on the dairy farm. And of course, at that time, you had no mechanization at all. Mm-hmm. Everything was done at the end of a handle of some sort.
Okay. Do you have a favorite childhood memory?
Not really.
No favorite child. That's all right. That's all right. Growing up, did you recall having a desire to join the military?
Not until after my brother had gone into the military.
Okay.
Up until that time, I don't think I had too much desire one way or another.
Okay. All right. Your brother joined the U.S. Air Force, if I remember correctly, as a waist gunner on a B-24 over in the Pacific.
Correct.
So as you kind of just mentioned, his joining the service, that played a part in you joining as well?
Oh, certainly. Little brother wants to do what big brother is bragging about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And he was telling me how much he loved it and everything, which of course spurred me on.
Very good. Very good. Your mother and father, they tried talking you out of joining.
Very much so.
I believe most parents kind of have those reservations, especially during a time that you were coming in World War II, there being hesitations for their son or daughter to join.
Not only that, but when both of us boys went into service, that meant all the work fell on them.
I bet. So, that's yeah.
So it was a double whammy.
You left your mom and dad with a lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do and a lot of worry.
I bet. No, absolutely. You mentioned I had a good idea that a lot of people weren't coming back home, but I promised my mother I would. Yet you were still driven to serve. With that thought, did you yourself have any reservations about joining?
None.
You were ready to join.
I was ready to go, ready to do my part, ready to come back home.
Absolutely. Joining the military today, it's, there's a process. Meet with the recruiter, you do a background check of, physical, the ASVAB tests, the process at MEPS, which is the Military Entrance Processing Station. What was the process like for you when you joined back in the 1940s?
I don't really recall too much about it. Of course, they give us a number of tests to see what we'd be best suited for.
Is it suited for job-wise?
Yes.
Okay.
And I was high on mechanical.
Okay.
So.
No, very good. Very good. You mentioned you were delighted when a B-17 pilot chose you to be part of his 10-man crew. How exactly were you chosen?
I was the last one chosen, and he had interviewed, I'd say about 6 or 8 of us veterans.
Okay.
And for some reason, he chose me, and of course, that is always a delight.
Absolutely. The Pot of Gold was the name of your B-17. How did that B-17 get the name Pot of Gold?
I have no idea. At the time, it was a radio program, but we were each assigned an airplane. But when we come to claim ours, it had already been flown with another crew, and it got shot up so badly that we never even got to see it. And we were flying what was known as spare airplanes. In other words, if your plane got shot up, it wasn't fit to go on the mission. They had a spare airplane for you. And so it wasn't only Pot of Gold that we flew on, it was whatever airplane happened to be available. But Pot of Gold was always our favorite because airplanes don't all handle the same. Some of them got much more speed. Some are much easier to fly. And Pot of Gold was our favorite.
It treated you well.
It treated you very well.
Very good.
Right to the very end.
Yes, yes. As a gunner on a B-17, you are in, I believe I recall you saying, the most dangerous position in the plane.
Well, there's two ways to look at it. During the time you're flying, it's actually the safest.
Okay.
Because you're curled up in a little tiny ball, so you've got less area to be hit. But the problem is, once you're hit, it is by far the most dangerous.
I bet.
So you hear it argued both ways. I mean, depending upon what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, during the time I was flying, there wasn't a single crew that made the so-called Magic 25 mission.
Yeah. Take us, pretend we're in that turret, all right, in that little bubble you're in. If I'm sitting in that, what's all around you? I shouldn't say all around you because you are in a tight space, but what do you got around you?
In the first place, the ball turret is a round ball. It's made out of metal and plexiglass, but none of it's thick enough to even deflect the smallest projectile, except for a seat that you sit on that's about 6 inches wide and about, six inches deep and a foot wide. So you haven't got much to sit on. But the ball turret is exactly 3 feet in diameter, and you're crowded in there with all your heavy gear, all your ammunition, 2 great big 50 caliber machine guns, and a great big forerunner of a computerized sight.
Wow.
And you're crowded in that position.
You're crammed in there.
And you're maybe in that same bowl for 12 to maybe even 14 hours.
Wow.
Without ever being able to leave it.
Wow. What's the standard crew on a B-17?
Standard crew, and I was flying with 10 crew members. Later on in the war, when the Luftwaffe was more or less destroyed, they cut it down to 9. But all the time I was flying, it was 10.
Okay. So you have your crew, your position on the B-17 Pot of Gold as a gunner. When did you head over to join the efforts in World War II?
We got in England on November 1st, 1943.
Okay. What were the living conditions, or excuse me, how were you notified that you're going to head over to World War II?
Well, everything is secretive at that time. In fact, they even issued us a lot of jungle warfare. I don't know, trying to
distract you or
yeah. To me, why was it that important of where we're going? So everything was kind of secretive right up to the time we boarded the ship.
Yeah.
And even then, they didn't tell us exactly where we were going, except, you surmised that was the European theater.
Mm-hmm. What were the living conditions like while overseas? The food, I hesitate to say accommodations. What was it like when you're not flying, not on missions? What was the life like around there?
Very, very leisurely. You could do whatever you wanted as long as you weren't alerted for a combat. You could do practically anything you wanted. You could sleep late.
Okay.
You could.
It's kind of your time, right?
It was your time,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Very good. February 22nd, 1944, you were returning from a mission with other B-17s. What kind of mission were you conducting?
It was actually, we were shown as the decoys. There was a small contingent of B-17s. I can't remember the exact number, but it was about 20 B-17s scheduled to fly to Aalborg, Denmark. It was an important mission, but we were there to draw the fire away from the Luftwaffe that was the main target being in the Ruhr.
Okay. So you're returning from that mission, and enemy planes start to attack your squadron. And if I'm saying this correctly, a Ju-88 swoops toward Pyro Gold?
It was a Ju-88 that shot us down, but there were also Me-109s that were also attacking.
Okay. Do you recall your initial thought when this starts happening? What's going through your mind at that time?
Everything seems to be quite automatic. I mean, we saw a plane just to our left go down, hit the water. And we knew that there were no survivors. And I would say a minute or two later, all of a sudden I heard a great big explosion coming from our right wing. And I looked out, and we were trailing fire, I would say 25, 30, maybe even 50 feet long. And there were just one explosion after another. I can't explain how often it was. What would happen? There'd be a real loud bang. It would be so violent that it would actually blow out all the flames. But then it would re-erupt from the hot metal and followed by another explosion. And this kept on for 20 minutes.
Now, you're originally, I believe, you are over the North Sea.
Right.
And you're the pilots, which I believe Lieutenant, is it Levy's? Levy's? Okay. So landing gear is down. He obviously went.
No, we put the landing gear down after we were hit to show that we had surrendered.
Surrendering.
It was the universal sign. The only problem with it was so many German Luftwaffe pilots didn't adhere to it at all, and could have kept right on shooting.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be here.
You mentioned the 20 minutes that you were on fire actually saved your life. How so?
Because it gave me ample time to get out of the turret and be ready to jump.
Because you have no parachute where you're located in the turret,
you can't.
Right?
You're so crowded in that ball turret that, in fact, I was way too big for the ball turret. Average ball turret is 5'6", 5'5", and I was 5'11" and a half. So I was so crowded in there that I couldn't even wear my heavy flying jacket. I had to rely on an electrically heated suit.
The German pilot didn't continue firing, as you mentioned, which allowed for the pot of gold to make a landing.
That is right.
Where was the landing spot?
Tisted, Denmark.
Now, you guys ended up jumping out of the plane though, or did you did land?
No. The wing blew off.
Okay.
The wing blew off, but just about the time we jumped.
Wow. Of the four planes,
we had just cleared landfall.
Okay.
If that wing would have blown off, I would say 30 seconds earlier, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Wow. Of the four planes shot down with a total, I believe, of 40 men on board, 9 survived, all from your crew. And your dear friend, again, Second Lieutenant William R. Levy's, killed in action. He landed in a frozen lake, broke through the ice, and called for help. And apparently there were Danish civilians who wanted to rescue him, but the Germans wouldn't allow it.
That's correct.
What can you tell us about Lieutenant Levy's, who you referred to as a brother?
Well, first I'm going to back up a little bit. Like you said, 9 of our crew survived, but that day there were 4 B-17 shot down out of that 20, and 10 men to each crew. 31 were killed, only 9 survived. So I feel very, very lucky. Now we were question again about
Lieutenant Levy's, you consider him a brother to you. What kind of man was?
He was like a father figure to us. He was 25 years old. We called him the old man. One thing about him, he would come when we were on leave, he would come with a fistful of money and he'd say, "Now I want you boys to have a good time when you're downtown. Does anybody need any money?" And no one ever took it, but I mean, it just shows you what a person he was.
He took care of you.
That much of his crew.
Yeah.
We admired him.
Absolutely. After the landing,
there was one other thing I was going to
yes
mention. This is way back in training. Shortly after I was selected on his crew, the officers at that time had a double duty. Of course, one was flying, and the other his job was calisthenics. And this top turret gunner and myself decided, well, if our pilot's doing it, we're not going to show up. He won't be that hard on us. So we didn't show up for calisthenics. And later on, the pilot came to the barracks and he was doing all kind of small talk and everything. And he says, "By the way, boys," he said, "I didn't see you at calisthenics this morning. Is there any reason for that?" And of course, we couldn't come up with any. And he says, "Well, boys, I know that you wanted to go downtown, but," he says, you're not going to be able to. I won't allow it." So, okay. Well, the top turret gunner and myself did have plans on going to town. At that base, there was a bus stop for the enlisted men and bus stop with the officers. And we figured, well, if he's going to be looking for us, he's going to be looking at the enlisted men. We're going to fool him and be at the officers. So we're standing at the officers' entrance, and the bus comes up. I felt a tap on my shoulder. "You boys going somewhere." And of course, we felt like healed. He says, "Well, if you wanted to go downtown that bad that you defy my orders, we'll all go downtown, and the drinks will be on me."
Oh, wow.
I mean, that just,
wow.
From then on, whatever he said, we did.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, he certainly knew how to get respect.
Yeah. Sounds like a great leader. After the landing, you and your crew were surrounded by Germans. What's going on at this time? You jump out of the plane, the wing falls off. You're surrounded by Germans. What's going through your head at this time?
What's going through your head is survival.
Yeah.
When something like that happens, you've been so well trained and everything, you do everything automatically without even thinking. But I don't think you mentioned the parachutes that we had were very, very, very small. They were completely different than what the ground troops had. Because, like I mentioned, the German pilots didn't adhere to surrender, and they would shoot guys in the parachute on the way down. So they made the parachute real small. And even in training, I found out they told us it was the equivalent of jumping off the two-story building. And
wow.
I don't think they exaggerated that one bit. So you hit like a
rough landing,
very rough landing, and you're kind of half stunned. And of course, everybody pointed their gun at you, and you've got absolutely no chance of escape whatsoever. Mm-hmm. In fact, the Germans have been shooting at us on our descent, and all of a sudden somebody must have given the order to cease fire, because on the latter part of our descent, there was more gunfire.
Wow.
Fire. So
wow.
So now I'm captured.
This time marks the start of your 15 months as a POW, enduring starvation, beatings, and disease as you are moved from prison camp to prison camp within Eastern Europe. If I remember the name correctly, is Stalag Luft 4 in Stalag Luft 6?
Correct.
Is where you were at?
We were in Stalag Luft 6
Okay.
first.
Okay. You were often given just one meal of watery soup or a can of rotten fish, which you all ate out of necessity. You hear screaming, cursing, begging for mercy. You heard every horrible sound you could hear.
That was at interrogation. You're jumping the two together. But yeah.
Occasionally you would hear gunshots. Were the gunshots a scare tactic or the last breath of a fellow service member?
That you didn't know.
Okay.
Because the first place you're talking about the interrogation, you're staring stiff. You don't have any idea what you're up against. You're in this great big room for maybe 500-600 other POWs, and you're listening to all these horrible sounds of men screaming and begging for mercy and cursing in German and even an occasional gunshot wound. And you're sitting in that room, maybe listening to that for 3-4 hours before the German guard even takes you in. You have no idea what to expect.
And you were if I recall, very persistent when you were being interrogated, giving just your name, rank. I believe there was another identification number or
rank and serial number.
Serial number. Okay. All right.
Well, we've been briefed over and over and over again that is all you give, but nothing else.
Yeah. And you stuck with that.
I stuck with it.
Yeah. Anything, what was the driving force that you stuck with what you were told to do? You stuck with saying the name, the rank, serial number. Anything internal that just made you, this is all I'm going to say?
Well, I think it's the training I have.
Okay.
I mean, after all, they have been very insistent about the name, rank, and serial number. And
wow. There was a time a prisoner suddenly started to sing "God Bless America."
Oh, this is way later on.
Later on,
This is the Heidi Kruger run.
Yep.
You're getting way ahead of yourself.
We're jumping up. We're jumping forward a little bit here. So I think back to the original question prior to that persistence that you kept with, saying your name, rank, and serial number. You were determined to keep a promise to your mother. What was that promise?
Well, I promised my mother I'd come back home alive. And I was very insistent on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that helped me a great deal to try to fulfill that commitment.
Yeah. Any communication back home to your family during this time that you know of now?
You mean during that time as a POW?
As a POW, yeah. Was there?
At the beginning of being a POW, we were allowed to write 2 letters home a month and 4 postcards, but they all had prescribed lines. They had to be written in big, bold letters, no numerals of any kind. And of course, they were censored both by the Germans and by the Americans before my parents ever got them. And you knew doggone well if you said even the least thing wrong, that like not being treated right or something like that. Even so, only got a fraction of the letters that my parents had written, and I think they got even fewer from me.
Mm-hmm. So we're moving forward a little bit. February of 1945, the Russian army is threatening from the east. Germans ordered.
I'm at another Stalag note, but now I'm at Stalag Luft
4, correct?
4.
Yep.
Which is in Poland.
Okay.
The first one is Gross-Zyrichowo, East Prussia.
Okay. The Germans are ordering the POWs to evacuate, starting what many survivors called the March, later known as, to the survivors, the German Death March, with tens of thousands of POWs in total, ranging from 600 to 800 miles that you traveled. If you couldn't keep up, you were shot. What were conditions like during this time marching?
Well, you were just absolute skin and bones. You hadn't had a bath. I had 2, what I'd call not even a bath, during the time I was a prisoner, and both of those were within the first month or 2 when I was captured. And it was February, and one prisoner would pump cold water out of the ground in an unheated room, and you would squat down under the pump. And of course, you had no washcloth, no towel, no nothing, and you had to put the clothes out across your wet skin. And when you got back to the barrack, it was unheated. So it wasn't very pleasant.
I bet.
And that was the only 2 times I even got a bath outside of trying to as best as I could.
Yeah. During the march, with one of the coldest winters on record, your American uniform was taken away and you were issued a hodgepodge of clothes that was not meant for the cold weather. Shoes from an English soldier.
Some from English, some from American, and all of it had been worn before. Where they got them from, I have no idea.
I am going to assume, growing up in Minnesota, did that help you out at all with those conditions?
Tremendously, because so many of my buddies have never even seen a snowflake, never spent outside, and of course hadn't done the manual hard labor that you had to do on a farm. So they were very much at a disadvantage.
I bet. Some days you had no food at all. Some days a cup of hot water, watery soup, or frozen sugar beets that were found on the road.
Correct.
With everyone suffering from dysentery, with no change of clothes, as you mentioned, or ways to wash. Was it the promise once again to your mother that continued to keep you going during this time?
It had a great deal to do with it. You bet it did.
What else? Anything else that continued to drive you to move forward?
I believed in prayer, and I think that helped greatly.
Absolutely. I just now want to get back to the God Bless America. Is that during this time, soldiers begin to sing, POWs begin to sing?
That was the end of the Heidekrug run.
Okay.
I don't think you covered the Heidekrug run very much. It started out in a coal ship. It was so crowded that you couldn't even sit down or anything. You had to remain standing up. I believe it lasted for around 4 days. You got absolutely no food, no water. You had to relieve yourself where you stood because everybody had severe dysentery, and ended up at a railroad station with German guards that were 12 and 13 years old. And I still remember this redheaded German, I think he was a mayor, but I'm not sure, telling us how lucky we were that we were going to get not 1 but 2 Red Cross parcels. And good heavens, we never even ever had even one. And sure enough, they handed out the 2 Red Cross parcels. But as soon as they handed them out, we were also shackled with each other. And it was a July day, but they made us put our overcoats on. As soon as the last parcel was doled out, I heard him give the command, affix bayonets. And then rouse, in other words, get going. And then he was telling the troops to shoot us. And that's what the Heidekrug run is. They ran us for the equivalent of 5 kilometers or about 3.5 miles, shackled with overcoats on, no water for 4 or 5 days. Though before that, we had even been in a siding in a boxcar, also so crowded with no food or no water. So it was about 5 or 6 days, no food, no water, and of course miserable as you could possibly be. And at the end of the Heidekrug run, they had us lay down in a meadow, and there was some pumps nearby. The German guards would pump water, throw the water at us, taunting us, and that's when somebody started singing "God Bless America."
And did many
everybody joined in, and that just infuriated the Germans. And they ordered us to either stop or we start shooting. And we knew they meant it, so
Yeah.
we had no choice. But we had made our point.
What would happen during the march if a man could not go on?
A shot. You never actually saw a man getting shot. What would happen? I was the head of the column. I was the interpreter, so
Because I believe you could speak a little German.
I could speak some German.
Okay.
But anyway, if man couldn't keep up, a German guard would drop back with him. You'd hear a single rifle shot, and the German guard would rejoin the formation. So, I mean, you knew doggone well what happened, but you never even saw it with your own eyes.
86 days after you left the POW camp, you are liberated by the English Army. Can you recall?
Wait a minute.
Excuse me?
86 days after what?
After 86 days, you were in the march.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Then you're all good. Thank you for making sure I was correct. So you're liberated by the English Army. When you're liberated, I can only assume, what's the feeling like when you're liberated?
We were so far gone that I think it took me several hours to even realize that we were free. And the English Army that liberated us were a forward unit. They were chasing Germans. And so they couldn't accompany us back to their temporary headquarters. And they told us it was, I can't remember, it was quite a distance back. It was 21 kilometers back. But anyway, some friends and I started in the direction we were supposed to be going. And pretty soon we came upon where there must have been a scrimmage just not too long before that, because there were dead Germans laying around. And for some reason, I don't know even to this day why, but I picked up one of their rifles. And like I said, we were barely able to walk. But anyway, we came past this farmhouse, and there were some horses out in the fence. Mm-hmm. So I told the guys that I'm going to see if we can't get those horses and not have to walk. And I went up to the door, and this woman came to the door, and I demanded to see the master of the house. Oh, don't hurt me, I'm Polsky, I'm forced labor. Of course, I assured her that we would do her no harm whatsoever. I pointed the gun at the German and said, we're taking your horses. Oh, no, they're lame, you can't have it. I said, we're taking your horses, if you like it or not. Then he wanted to know what we was going to do with the horse. And I said, we have to go to such and such outpost that said, we're not walking. Then he said, well, what would it be like if I hitch my tractor and wagon? Their tractors are much different than our tractors. Their tractors are for hauling produce to market. I mean, they're not meant for plowing or anything like that. But I said, that would be just great. So he got his wagon and everything ready, and I made him pick up every straggler along the way. And when we got to the British outpost, I thanked him and sent him back home.
Wow. Were your parents, or when were your parents, if you recall, notified that you were liberated?
They weren't.
Never notified that you were liberated?
They weren't.
Wow.
The Army was terrible. When I was captured, they sent an immediate program that I was missing in action. They never even bothered to tell my parents that I was a prisoner. They didn't find out until May 31st, 1944. And that wasn't from the Army, that was from a girl that I knew in England.
So you make your way back a couple months forward to Long Prairie. What's the reaction the first time you see your parents again?
What would you expect?
I just want to, I don't want to assume. I can't imagine, the feeling, especially the promise that you upheld and you held it for your mother.
Of course, they knew I was coming because I had telegrammed ahead they knew I was coming, but they didn't know exactly when I was coming. And I did catch them a little bit off guard, but they had the biggest celebration ever. And of course, the rest is history.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So moving forward, you married Bernice, right? Or Beatrice? Is there a
Bernice.
Bernice? Okay.
I met her on May 17th, 1947. We were married 1 year to the day. May 17th, 1948, we were married.
Unfortunately passed in 2023. Bless her. Rest in peace. Wife of 75 years. Then you moved to, is it Edina? Edina. What can you tell us about Bernice? What do you remember most about her?
Well, outside of being a wonderful wife, we used to enjoy travel a lot. We did have a lot of things in common. We used to go camping, and then later on, even motorcycle camping. So we had quite a few of the same interests.
Yeah, very good.
We both loved travel. We both loved to dance. So we had quite a few things in common.
What was your go-to dance?
My what?
What was your go-to dance? Did you have a favorite dance?
A polka.
Polka was your favorite dance? And I would be remiss if I didn't mention you and your wife had a daughter, Virginia, who unfortunately passed again. Thoughts and prayers. What do you remember most about your daughter?
Oh, she was a wonderful, wonderful girl. Anybody that met her, she would make friends instantly.
I see who she learned it from.
Not me. She worked in the embassy and was all over the world. She also got the travel bug from my wife and I. And in fact, even during high school, she used to take trips to Mexico with another girl. So that's where she got the travel bug from.
Yeah.
And of course, that's how she got the job in the embassy.
Wow. So if the story as what you shared so far isn't believable or unbelievable as is, you visit your crash site. So moving forward quite a bit here, you visit your crash site in Denmark and you find something that you said was equivalent of finding a needle in a haystack.
That is right. The identification plate.
How big are we talking about? Is this identification?
It's about 3 inches by 2 inches.
Wow.
And
wow. What's on the for those that may not know, what's on that identification plate?
It says it's a B17G, and it gives the serial number 42-31377. And I can't remember. I think that's about the equivalent of everything it does say.
Yeah. And then there's more, which is just amazing.
I also found one of the handles from my wall turret. And the amazing thing is, the farmer that owned that piece of land said that kids from school had been scurrying that ground for years and years for show and tell. And
yet you're the one who finds.
Here I come, and just boom.
Man. And then there's more. Your late 80s, with help from some European friends, you tracked down the phone number for the German pilot that shot you down but spared your life. You initially made a phone call and a woman had answered.
Well, actually, I have to correct you. I a lot of times say I searched for the German pilot. That is really incorrect. I was at the crash site in Denmark, and we were around the table with a bunch of Danish people. And I had mentioned when we were shot down, there was a high-ranking German officer that came and looked at us. And I said, I think he maybe was the pilot that shot us down. And I would have liked to have talked to him. And this one Danish guy says, I'll help you find him. And he is the one that spent 4.5 years searching for the German pilot. And he's the one that made the phone call and said, what do you mean his grave. He's sitting right here alongside of me.
Yeah, I believe because they wanted to put flowers at his grave,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
wife had
Well,
answered.
The Germans wouldn't give out any information
Okay.
on veterans. And later on, I understand the one he did get the information got reprimanded because of it. That he gave out information, finding the pilot, that he wasn't really supposed to. Because this Danish guy had said to him that I wanted to find the German pilot because I wanted to put flowers on his grave for saving my life. That was the spiel he was using
Okay.
to trying to get
Wow.
information.
Okay. Wow. And then even crazier, 2012, you and your wife traveled to Germany in 2012. Who is it that you meet in Germany over, I believe in Germany it was that you
It was
met?
at Heidelberg.
I don't thank you.
I had been emailing the German pilot, and by the way, he spoke perfect English at that time because after the war he actually flew for NATO,
Oh, wow.
and so he learned perfect English, and he welcomed us with open arms. He treated us to all kinds of sights, and I had mentioned to a German later on that he even had us over at his place for a dinner and showed us his war trophies. And the German just couldn't believe it. A German would never do that to somebody they didn't know real well. That would only be reserved for their family.
Mhm.
They were just surprised that he would actually open up to us to that extent.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So Mr. Hans Mueller.
Hans Hermann Mueller.
Yep. You meet face to face. Unbelievable. And you were asked why you would want to meet the German pilot, and you had stated, if I hated him, would it hurt him? No, it would hurt me. It would make me a bitter person.
That is correct. And I thought I owed him a thank you for saving my life to begin with, because if it would have been a lot of other German pilots, he had us at his mercy. I mean, our plane was disabled. He could have just as well just kept on shooting, and we wouldn't be here. And he would have almost had a perfect right to do it.
Mm-hmm. Moving forward a little bit more, last year had the tremendous pleasure and honor once again to be with you and 65 other World War II veterans, 2 Rosie Riveters, and a Holocaust survivor to head over to France for the 80th anniversary of D-Day along American Airlines. And the best hub to do it, Old Glory Honor Flight out of Northeast Wisconsin. What was your experience like, Wes, that week that we were over in France?
Like being in heaven. It was just unbelievable how much overboard American Airlines went to make us comfortable. They gave me all kind of clothing to wear, carrying bag, even adapters for the electricity. I mean, any little thing that you could think of, they furnished. And of course, the hospitality was out of this world. So I think I owe American Airlines a great deal.
The French hospitality was first class. It was unbelievable.
Was.
It was unbelievable.
Even the trip over, we had the little individual compartments in first class.
Yes. Snooze laying on your back just on down.
You could stretch out full length, lay on your back with a pillow, and relax.
Yeah. How about that medical crew from Old Glory Honor Flight? And just so you know, one of them sitting next to you. All right. So how'd they do? How'd Diane and Drew and their crew do?
They couldn't have been better. Yep. Anything we wanted, they were right there.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. And then last year as well, we had once again the tremendous pleasure of having you. I believe it was mission number 72 when you came to Appleton for an Old Glory Honor flight for your trip to Washington D.C. Was it October, September, October, or Diane? You remember what mission number?
I don't remember exactly.
I don't remember. It was in the fall.
Yeah, it was towards fall.
Yeah, yep. You got to come with us, see how we do things in Northeast Wisconsin, the Old Glory Honor Flight. How was your trip to DC with those veterans and the experience you had there?
About the same thing as the first experience. I mean, they couldn't have done better.
Mhm.
I mean, they took care of about every little whim. We had all the food we wanted. They couldn't have been better.
That's amazing, truly amazing. For veterans that have not been on their flight of honor or hesitant about going, what message would you want to tell them?
Go.
Yeah.
If you're able to go while you can,
Mhm.
because it won't be too much longer. You will not be able to go.
Got one more question for you, Les. If you could give words of advice, words of wisdom, or a message to our armed forces today, what would you like to tell them?
That would be a hard one.
Putting you on the spot a little bit.
Putting me on the spot.
Anything that you can think of.
I would say honor your freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have no idea what it's like to lose their freedom. They just think everybody is free. That just is simply not the case. You don't realize what freedom is like until you lose it.
It's so, and I 100%. I know sometimes people, it may sound cliche, but there's a small percentage that volunteer. Obviously, in the past, were drafted, but do what their country asks them to do. And for many of us Americans, we don't know anything different except freedom. And when that's in jeopardy, or for instance, you're in another country as well too. And I go back to just how hospitable the French were when we went to Normandy last year, how appreciative they were, and that they didn't forget, 80 years later. And I love seeing the kids that knew why as well too, which is so important. So you nailed it on the head, my man.
And I think it was even more so on the trip to the Battle of the Bulge. Even the teenagers would come and put your arms around you and thank you for saving my country. Thank you for my freedom. It was just on and on and on. You don't get that here in the United States.
That's as in very deserving.
And I think it's because they come much closer to losing their freedom. Well, they did lose their freedom.
Yes.
Where here in the United States, a lot of the war didn't even really affect people that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Outside of a loved one being off in service or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Schrenk, I stumble and hesitate on this next part here because I don't want to undermine the actuality of what I have in here, the respect, the love that I have for you, the admiration. I will never forget last year after American Airlines had a send-off for you. We were flying out that Friday evening over to Paris. And my veteran and I, Clarence, who fought on the Pacific side, we sit at your table for lunch. And there's a bigger table, 10 or 12 of us sitting there, and we're all kind of conversing. And I remember you starting to share a little bit of what you shared with us here today. And I was just absolutely in awe of what I was hearing and trying to imagine the sacrifices, the service, your continued grit, your fighting spirit, your will, the promise to your mother that kept you going. Your story inspired me. Last few years had something in my head that I'm supposed to do something. Whatever it may mean, I will never forget that lunch. And when you shared some of your story, it put some of the pieces together for me in creating this platform, because I've learned through the unbelievable opportunities with that trip to Normandy, being a part of the Old Glory Honor Flight family and Missions of Honor in Northeast Wisconsin for the last 11 plus years, how fortunate I am to be with such amazing people as yourself and the stories you have. You are an inspiration. You will always be an inspiration. I will never forget your story. I will continue to share your story. And I think it's a message that not only our country, but the world, if we could just take an ounce of, again, your will and fighting spirit, a big part on setting that difference aside when you met Mr. Hans Mueller, the individual that, caused 15 months of prisoner of war. And I can't imagine what you've lived with since. And you set that difference aside and you met him face to face. And we'll pull the picture up here. The handshake between you and Mr. Hans Mueller, the facial expression, it was such a thing of beauty to see that you set aside that difference and you became instant friends or became very good friends during that short period of time that you guys met. And the craziest part as well, too, Preserving Freedom podcast, I don't know how, I think I was talking with Diane about this. She may be the one that thought of this name. But my wife sent me a text, and actually in your bio that we all got when we went to Normandy with all the veterans' pictures in there, the last part in there, you mentioned, after being asked what he believed his greatest accomplishment was, Les responded that he was most proud he could preserve freedom, as people never truly appreciate freedom until it is stripped away from them. My wife asked me, did you get the name from Les's bio? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she sent this to me. I'm like, what are the odds? You had that right there, Preserving Freedom. I had the tremendous pleasure of being with you for a week in Normandy, the Flight 72 or Mission 72 on Old Glory Honor Flight. Have, again, lunch at that table and you being an inspiration. I will never be able to thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for spending time today. It is always an honor and a pleasure. As I mentioned on the bus when we were heading back to Charles de Gaulle to fly to Dallas-Fort Worth, you all taught me that week why you are called the greatest generation. And we will never forget that. We will be sure we will never forget that.
Thank you very much, Jason.
And you set the bar extremely high.
I don't think I'm really special at all. My only claim to fame is that I outlived all the rest of the guys. And now that there's just a few of us left, it seems like they can't do enough for us. 20, 30 years ago, we were a dime a dozen. And only because I was able to outlive everybody is the only reason that everybody thinks I'm famous. I'm really not.
It's those water aerobics. That's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you going. But again, Les, sir, truly an unbelievable honor. And I just want to, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being my first combat veteran and sharing your story here on Preserving Freedom.
I think you did very, very well. And I appreciate you even taking the time to interrogate me. I shouldn't use interrogate. Part my expression.
Well, sincerely, thank you so much, sir. Truly appreciate you.
Thank you.